Because of why I search the deep through endless nights, no time to sleep. The call inside I can't deny. I'll find the light because of why.
Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're jumping into the absolutely wild story of how this tiny little territory on the coast of China became one of the richest places on the entire planet. Let's get straight to it.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a fact that is, honestly, kind of mind-blowing. If you line up all the world's richest places by GDP per capita, how much money is generated per person, Macau comes in at number 2. Yeah, number 2, right behind Luxembourg and ahead of powerhouses like Singapore and Qatar.
So you gotta ask, right? How on earth did this happen? How did a place that started out as basically a bunch of swampland with no real natural resources to speak of end up with this just staggering amount of wealth?
Now, the easy answer, the one everyone knows, is gambling. Casinos. And yeah, that's a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole story, not even close. The real story, the one we're going to unpack today, is all about a series of massive, high-stakes bets that Macau made over and over again throughout its history. Bets that paid off in ways you can't even imagine.
So to really get it, we've got to rewind the clock. Way back to the 16th century, long before any slot machines. This is where it all started, with Macau becoming this vital bridge between the East and the West.
For hundreds of years, Macau was a trading hub. It did really well. But then, in 1841, the British set up Hong Kong, just down the road, and it completely took over. Suddenly, Macau's money dried up. So, facing total economic collapse, the Portuguese government there had to make its first giant bet. In 1849, they made gambling legal. And this is where the timing was just everything. China had just been weakened by the Opium Wars and really wasn't in a position to argue. Portugal gambled that China would basically have to look the other way, and that bet, it paid off big time. And it laid the groundwork for the empire to come.
In that decision, it set the stage for the era of the tycoons. For the next several decades, one man didn't just play the game in Macau, he basically was the game.
And the irony here is just incredible. This piece of advice comes from Stanley Ho, the man literally known as the king of gambling, who for 40 years held an absolute monopoly over every single casino in Macau.
Ho's real genius was in how he catered to the super rich, the high rollers. He built these incredibly exclusive VIP rooms and then perfected what's called the junket system. Basically, these operators would fly in wealthy clients from the mainland and give them huge lines of credit to gamble with. A clever way to get around all sorts of rules.
The result of all this was just staggering. Get this, by 1994, Stanley Ho's company was responsible for 75% of the entire Macau government's revenue. I mean, just let that sink in. One single company was bankrolling almost the entire state. But here's the thing about monopolies. They rarely last forever. In 1999, Macau was handed back to China, and Beijing had, well, very different ideas. This wasn't going to be about one king anymore. This was about building a global empire.
So in 2001, China made its move. It ended Stanley Ho's 40-year monopoly. Now, they let him stay in the game, but they also opened the doors to 5 brand new operators, including some of the biggest names from Las Vegas. The whole game just shifted overnight. It went from a one-man show to an all-out war between giants.
But if Macau was going to truly take the crown from Las Vegas, it had 2 massive problems to solve. First, it needed way more customers, millions of them. And second, it needed a place to put all the new casinos.
Beijing handled the customer problem by making it much easier for mainland Chinese citizens to get travel visas. And for the space problem, Macau just built more land. They reclaimed a huge area from the sea and created the Cotai Strip. And the result? By 2013, Macau's gambling revenue was 7 times bigger than Las Vegas. 7 times! Absolutely insane.
But that kind of explosive growth, well, it always comes with a price tag. When you win that big, that fast, there's always a hidden cost. Let's call it the winner's curse.
I mean, look at this. When you're this dependent on one thing, you're walking on a tightrope. With half its economy tied to gaming, the whole city is just incredibly vulnerable. A pandemic hits, Beijing cracks down on corruption, travel rules change, and Macau's economy doesn't just dip, it completely craters.
And all that wealth? It's definitely not spread around evenly. This quote from someone who actually lives there really hits home. Those sky-high GDP numbers are skewed by the super rich. Once you get away from the glittering casinos, there's another side to Macau, a side the nearly 40 million tourists a year never get to see.
The pressure on daily life is just immense. Macau is the most densely populated place on the entire planet. It's bursting at the seams. And remember that land they reclaimed for the Cotai Strip? It was originally supposed to have housing for 150,000 people. Instead, they built casinos. The land is so scarce that the University of Macau actually had to move its main campus over to mainland China.
Which brings us to today, and to what might be Macau's biggest and, honestly, riskiest gamble yet. Because Macau knows it's too dependent on the casinos, it's now betting its entire future on being able to move beyond them.
And they have an official game plan with a lot of encouragement from Beijing. It's called the 1+4 strategy, and it's basically the city's master plan to build a much more stable and diverse economy.
So what is it? Well, the 1 is about keeping tourism as the main focus, but making it about more than just gambling. Think concerts, shows, conventions, and the 4 represents a huge push into 4 totally new areas: health and medicine, finance, tech, and culture. The goal? A really ambitious one, for these new industries to eventually make up 60% of the entire economy.
And believe it or not, we're already seeing little signs that it could work. Not long ago, a series of concerts by a pop superstar didn't just sell out. The people who came for the shows also caused casino revenues to jump by 19%. That's the strategy in action. Use big entertainment to pull people in, and they'll spend money everywhere.
For more than 170 years, Macau has rolled the dice and won. It transformed itself from a swamp into the gambling capital of the world. But now it's making its biggest bet ever, a bet on transforming itself all over again. The only question is, can they pull off another win?
So what do you think? Can Macau really pivot away from the industry that made it rich? I would love to hear what you think down in the comments. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and we'll catch you on the next one.